Welcome in. It is another NFL season preview here on Sports by the Book. I'm Jeff Parles. She's Alex White. Of course, we're always doing our show from the South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. So we get to bring it home here today, Alex, with the Las Vegas Raiders here in our 2025 previews.
Right down the street from Allegiant Stadium, one of the prettiest NFL stadiums there is. Things are looking up for Las Vegas. Finally, we've got the Pete Carroll era beginning.
Yeah, so the Antonio Pierce era went as poorly as at least I thought it was going to go. And, the Raiders, got to give them credit for their offseason, and we'll go through it all. But let's just start with the AFC West as a whole, with the Raiders, of course, in here. And it's an uphill battle for Las Vegas here, just because three playoff teams a year ago. Of course, Kansas City was in the Super Bowl yet again, even though they got clobbered by Philadelphia in New Orleans. They were still there for the third consecutive year, had a chance to be the first team ever to three-peat in the Super Bowl era. The Chargers, Jim Harbaugh came in, and after, again, this is what the hope is in Las Vegas, right? Really bad head coach replaced with a high-end head coach, and the Chargers made the playoffs. Yeah, I understand Herbert was awful in that playoff game, but you know what? The Chargers still made the playoffs.
Right.
After the 3 years of the Brandon Staley era, where they underachieved as badly as anyone in the NFL in those 3 seasons. And then the Broncos were the big surprise in the NFL as a whole, in the AFC a year ago, where Bo Nix really struggled the first 6 weeks, and by the end of the year, the Broncos were making the playoffs, and Bo Nix looked like a top half quarterback. So Sean Payton, another one, really horrible coach there before him. It took him 2 years, but got Denver back into the playoffs, and now Antonio Pierce was clearly not an NFL caliber head coach. Josh McDaniels before him, obviously, we now know, obviously, is one of the bigger disasters in head coaching history in the NFL. And now you bring Pete Carroll, a guy who's won a Super Bowl. There were questions at the end of his Seattle tenure. Did the game pass him by? Pete's now the oldest coach in the NFL, even with getting this job first year here in Vegas. But Pete did a really good job this offseason of building out a high-end coaching staff around him, Alex.
Yes, he did. And now Chip Kelly comes in as the OC, who has a lot of head coaching experience, but now will just be running that offense, which I think is huge for them. You saw in our graphic before, you're right, the Chiefs, they are the favorite to win this division, and it is theirs until somebody knocks them off. But very competitive, because 3-1 for the Chargers to win, 3-1 for the Broncos to win, and then it drops off pretty significantly for the books, at least 12-1 for the Raiders to win it. I don't know if it should be that big of a gap. I do think this is going to be one of the most competitive divisions that we see this year.
It is, to me, the best division in the AFC. I'm not going to go as far as saying it's the best division in the NFL, because there's one in the NFC that I think there's a legitimate argument that all 4 of those teams could actually make the Super Bowl if things go right, as crazy as it may seem on one team. But look, for the Raiders, and you just saw their schedule, and you see their win total and all their odds to make the playoffs, division, all that here on the screen in front of you, along with the other division. You have 3 teams in this division with a over 500 win total. 9.5 on Denver and LA, and then 11.5 on Kansas City. The Raiders are sitting there at 7 with heavy juice on the over here, Alex. And Ryan, you can flip over to the schedule portion of this real quick. And look, we talked about it with a few other teams. We will learn quickly. I don't know how quickly we're going to learn here, because week 1, that is a pretty big game, all things considered, for everyone loves New England except for me going into this season, or Alex also. We haven't done the Patriots as of time we've recorded the Raiders, but we'll, of course, have the Patriots soon as well. But that's a big game week 1, where you've Mike Vrabel and Pete Carroll, 2 of the bigger names that were hired this offseason for
Yep.
It was the 2 biggest names for previous head coaching experience. Of course, Johnson was the biggest name for a guy with no previous NFL head coaching experience. But look, it's an important start to the year. You have a chance. There'll be a dog in New England, but that's a winnable game week 1. And then you flip around and you play the Chargers on a Monday night for Harbaugh against Carroll yet again. We know how much those 2 guys like each other through the years in San Francisco and Seattle. But you have winnable games against the Bears at home, and the Titans at home, and at Indianapolis, and then Jacksonville in week 9. There is an opportunity here for the Raiders where, look, this schedule, it gets more difficult down the stretch, sure, but there's a path to winning 9 games here in Vegas in year one, here in the Pete Carroll era, just looking at that schedule. And of course, we haven't even mentioned any of the players yet. They're improved the big way in quarterback with acquiring Geno Smith, better than anyone who played the position a year ago for the Raiders.
And you said it right there. You said there is a path for 9 wins. That's what I have penciled in, and I know how tough this division is going to be, but I've got 8, 9 wins, depending on where you go with the pick'em games. I am a little surprised that they are a full field goal against the Patriots that first week. I do think this roster is a little bit better than the Patriots, and so I think it should be closer to 2, maybe 1.5 there. So, I mean, I do think it's going to be tough. It is an uphill battle, but you just brought it up too. Geno Smith comes in, a lot of experience. Pete Carroll wanted him. That is his guy. Geno Smith's year wasn't that bad last year, but it was down from when he did have Pete Carroll as a head coach to now going to McDonald in Seattle. So I like that. They draft Ashton Genty with their first round pick. And I do like some of the other pieces they have around their offense. And we'll get to the wide receiver position, but I like their tight end position. Of course, Brock Bowers had a historic year last year, could break some records this year as well. And they have Michael Mayer as well. So I think that Chip Kelly will be able to do some things with 2 tight ends there. But the wide receiver is probably the one position that's a little questionable.
Well, so again, Geno, his 3 years as a starter in Seattle, he's over 500 all 3 years. And remember that first year, the Seahawks were projected to be the worst team in the NFL. They made the playoffs. And then, of course, back-to-back years, no playoffs last year, even with the 10-win season in Seattle. And the one thing with Geno, look, he's never going to be an elite NFL quarterback. But Geno Smith covered a lot of flaws in Seattle. That was a team that never had a good offensive line while he was there, and he covered them up. Again, when Geno Smith played, they won games up in Seattle the last 3 years. Now, this offensive line for the Raiders, I still have a lot of questions on. Now, Colton Miller has improved steadily every single year at left tackle. You bring in Alex Kappa to play right guard, which is a big improvement for a position that has been a mess recently for this franchise. What are you getting out of your right tackle position? Scares me. Do you trust DJ Glaze or Thaler Munford at right tackle? I don't really. Again, you have questions at center as well. With Powers Johnson, I have questions about that offensive line as well. But Geno has shown he can cover up a mediocre offensive line. You mentioned the wide receivers. This is a bad wide receiving core on paper. It just is. Jacoby Myers is realistically, at best, a number 2. He's your number 1 wide receiver. It's really going to come down to what the product Jack Beck comes out of TCU. What type of player is he right away? Can he become a guy who actually can turn into a number 1 wide receiver for this Raider team? Now, of course, yes, I recognize that Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the NFL going into this year, and that helps things, obviously. But you need some production out of the wide receiver position. And this collection of Beck, Tucker, Myers, Thornton, and Johnson, realistically speaking, again, and they just signed Philly Dorsett a few days before we recorded this. I don't know what Philly Dorsett really is at this point of his career. They got to get some sort of production, and that could be the biggest hamper on this offense here, even with an elite rookie running back in Ashton Genty and the best tight end in the NFL in Brock Bowers.
Pro Football Focus, you can find a comparison from the O-line rankings from the end of last year to the preseason for this year. And while the Raiders have the 5th best improvement, they went from 26th to 18th.
Yeah,
so improvements, but still right there in the middle of the pack. I kind of have the middle of the pack for everything. Their offense falls right in the middle. Defense a little bit better than middle of the pack, I would say. So that is very interesting, and I am glad that you brought that up because the O-line is so important, especially if they want to get their run game going with Ashton Genty.
They have a great backfield, actually. Obviously, Genty's going to be the number 1 guy, but they bring in Raheem Mostert from Miami, who has been a very successful running back over the years between San Francisco and South Beach. Still have Sincere McCormick and Zamir White, who got run a year ago on the roster. We imagine one of them will probably not make the team, but that's really good depth for the Raider backfield. And look, this is the thing with Chip Kelly. We know what we're getting out of him as a play caller. He's creative. We saw it a year ago in route to a national title at Ohio State. Chip Kelly has always been a better play caller than a head coach for the majority of his career, except for a few years at Oregon as well. But look, I can't get over how coaching is, of all the professional sports, coaching in football is the most important of the four major professional sports: hockey, basketball, and baseball. And you could argue that the manager means nothing in Major League Baseball. Basketball, the coaches change so often that their shelf life is very short. And in hockey, I would argue coaching in hockey is probably the second most important at this point.
Yep.
But coaching in the NFL is huge. And you cannot discount, again, I'm not a huge Pete Carroll fan at this stage of his career, but it is a monster upgrade. And that's what makes the Raiders an intriguing team to make the playoffs at that plus 290, Alex. Now, you get a last place schedule. You are in a difficult division, as we talked about. But if either the Chargers or the Broncos take a step back, which is very possible, especially if what we saw in the postseason affects Herbert at all, or if the league figures out Bo Nix a little bit, there's a path for the Raiders to make the playoffs. Now, I'd much rather have over 7 than I would the plus 290 to make the postseason, because look at that schedule. I mean, Alex, that schedule's insane. And you have to play the NFC East. You have to play 6 against your own division, which were all playoff teams a year ago. And you have to cross as well. Now,
AFC South.
You get the break with the AFC South.
That is the break.
But you have to go to Houston, who's the best team in the division. And you have to go to Indianapolis, who, again, has talent on defense. So, Alex, I think this could be a one of the most improved teams in the NFL, maybe even the most improved team in the NFL, and they could be 8-9.
Right.
They could go 7-10 just because of how difficult their schedule is. I do like over 7, though. I think they are going to win 8 games, maybe even 9, and push for that final wild card spot in the AFC this year.
I do too, and if you are on the same boat as this, I would look for 7.5 to get a better price than laying that minus 135 and having a chance to push. Because like I said, I am right there between 8 and 9. It depends. I mean, if all things go really well, there is definitely a shot for them to win 10 games here this year. I do think 3 teams are going to make it into the playoffs from this division again. Kind of to your point, who's going to take a step back? Thought it might be the Chargers at first, but man, when you see what they have done for their offseason with Harbaugh, and I do trust Justin Herbert more than Bo Nix. But then Denver, I think, is a top 3 defense in the league.
Defense is great.
So it's really tough now. Kansas City, I mean, they do have the best quarterback who knows how to win games, of course. So even though they didn't do a whole lot this offseason, you always got to pencil in the Chiefs.
We didn't really mention the Raider defense. Patrick Graham is still around. And again, I think Patrick Graham is a top flight defensive coordinator. And
yes,
you know what his reputation is. He's now survived 3 different head coaches now.
Pretty impressive.
In Las Vegas. At defense, again, Max Crosby's health is going to be the utmost important. Crosby is one of the top 7 favorites for defensive player of the year. He's also 20-1 to win comeback player of the year as well off of the injury. They bring in Jermaine Pratt. They bring in a Landon Roberts from Pittsburgh to help out the linebacking core. They bring in Eric Stokes and Jeremy Chin and Lonnie Johnson to help out the secondary. Again, this is an improved defense. And again, this just goes back to what we said the whole way through on this Raider team. This team is vastly improved from coaching to the quarterback to the defense from a year ago. It's just a matter of, will the schedule just be too difficult for them? Defensive player of the year, I just want to talk about with Crosby real quick. I think Max Crosby's alive to be defensive player of the year this year. Because as you look at the guys at the top of that board, Hutchinson's coming off a major injury. The Browns, you and I, we already had our Browns previews already out. We think the Browns are going to be terrible. I think it's going to be really hard for Myles Garrett to win that award because of how bad we think Cleveland's going to be. TJ Watt off the big contract. Don't love taking guys coming in all getting their big contract. Which then, of the elite pass rushers in this league, that leads me to Crosby, where the Raiders could be one of the bigger surprises in the NFL this year. They make the playoffs. That's a surprise. And Max Crosby very easily could have a 17, 18 sack season. By the way, 15 plus sacks is plus 350 over at DK. I think that's a pretty reasonable bet if he can stay healthy this year. Crosby, to be the defensive player of the year, if you're getting anywhere in that 14-1, 15-1 pocket, I'd even go as shy as 12-1 on Crosby preseason. I think that's your best bet future-wise, period, involving the Raiders other than if you want to take a shot, or in the awards market, I should say, if you want to take a shot at plus 290 to make the playoffs, I think you and I are in agreement. I think that's worth a shot. Since you have them going over 500, I think they're an 8-9, 9-8 team this year. 9-8 could be good enough to get to 7 in the AFC.
I do agree with that defense. A lot is going to depend on that front four, like you said, with Crosby's health. And then I'm going to butcher his last name with Malcolm, who missed all of last year. But before that, we saw signs that he could be very good on the opposite side of Crosby. He started really slow in 2023, but then ended up having 8 sacks in his last 8 games. So I think that could be great for him. I can't remember if you brought up Christian Wilkins, of course, coming off of that Jones fracture. So if he can be healthy in the middle there, then, man, I really do think this defense could be good. So I don't hate that at all. Has Max Crosby won it yet?
Defensive player, no.
No. So, I mean, he's been right there throughout the years. So I don't hate that at all. I do like taking a little bit on that to make the playoffs, and I do like their win total over.
This defensive player to market, super interesting because Jared Verse in his second year, Will Anderson obviously had a huge year in year 2 in Houston a year ago. And then you could even go down the board. Boy, there are so many questions about Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati at the time of our recording, if he's even going to be there at all.
Right.
And remember last year, Surtain won it. It's going to be a pass rusher. It's very difficult for a defensive back to ever win it. Almost impossible for a D-back to win it back-to-back years, even if it is a different guy like a Gardner or a Stingley or a Mitchell. It's just going to be very difficult for another secondary guy to win it. Comeback player of the year, Crosby's down at 25-1. We've said this on multiple episodes already. I'm stunned that Aiden Hutchinson isn't almost odds on. Stunned. Even with Dak coming off significant injury for the second time in his career, Hutchinson coming off that severely broken leg should be like plus 110 going into the year. Yeah, I would bet that right now at plus 270 on Aiden Hutchinson. All right, Alex, anything else on this Raider team? Because you and I both seem to be high on them. The only hesitation I have is they have a brutal schedule. They're playing in the most difficult division in the AFC. And look, they're still the worst team on paper in this division. And they need to, in order to make the playoffs or win 9-10 games, 5-6 win improvements are hard to come by in this league. But in the end, I like over 7 on the Raiders. I think a sprinkle at plus 290, $3 to make the playoffs is well worth it on this Raider team.
I do too. And kind of just going back to that main position with Geno Smith, and I mean, there is definitely a high ceiling for Geno that we could get to. He did lead the league in passing completion percentage in 2022. And last year it was even better than that. But that just shows how good this league is. So he is about 70%. I do think he'll be able to really help this offense turn it around. And I mean, this defense they've had the pieces the last few years. Now they just needed to fill a few holes. And I think if it all comes together, they can definitely be over 500.
Raiders, 7 on the win total, 12-1 to win the West, plus 290 to make the postseason right now for Las Vegas. All right, that's what we got here on the Las Vegas Raiders. We haven't even mentioned really Ashton Jeanty at all. As you see on your screen, is the betting favorite to be the offensive rookie of the year. We kind of said this in our Tennessee preview. It's really a 3-horse race in my book for offensive rookie. It's Jeanty, it's Ward, and it's Omarion Hampton, who very easily could be the number 1 back in LA with the Chargers. I think Ward should be favored over Jeanty, but again, there's been talk this offseason of a running back split in Las Vegas, which would be a little bit of a hard go of it for Jeanty between him and Mostert. If it's like 65-35, it's going to be hard for Jeanty to win unless if he's just scoring all the touchdowns, which could be here in Las Vegas.
I will tell you one thing. I'm not going to draft him early on in any of my fantasy football leagues. I'm going to wait, probably see which high-end running back I can get first, and then go for Hampton as my second running back. So kind of like you just mentioned with the 3-horse race, I really do like him for the Chargers and think he will be the number 1.
Jeanty plus 270 over at FanDuel. That's the best available price on him to win the offensive rookie of the year. All right, that's what we got here on the Raiders. All of our previews available right here on the YouTube page, Sports by the Book. She's Alex White. I'm Jeff Parles. We're live every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday here on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed to make sure you don't miss any of our previews here this year, Alex.
Is it crazy? I just want to ask, is Brock Bowers on the offensive player of the year?
Not on my radar.
Okay.
I just think I think it's impossible for a tight end to win that award, personally. I really do.
Just thinking, what if it's plain sight right in front of us?
Yeah.
greatness, and we're going to miss the year 2 that we could jump in.
Yeah, I think it's impossible for a tight end. I mean, the season he would have to have in order to win Offensive Player of the Year would have to be basically Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez levels, like all-time great tight end season. Kelsey at his best. Like, that's what we're talking here. Maybe even Jimmy Graham at his best, who just retired from the NFL as well. More previews to come in the NFL. We'll get all 32 teams over the next few weeks here on the channel. Sports by the Book, live as always from the South Point Hotel and Casino here in Las Vegas. She's Alex. I'm Jeff. We'll see you next time. Sports by the Book. This has been another NFL preview.